Good morning. Welcome to M&D1 Media. My name is Diana Korir as your host today. Behind the camera is our very own Molo Wilson, who is handling everything. You may not see him, but he's there in a very pivotal part of this group. We thank you for joining us today. We have an extra special episode for you today. We are sitting in iSpace 2 Studios in Marietta, very wonderfully hosted by 𝗘𝘅𝗰𝗹𝗂𝗪. And we have a special co-host with us today, the one and the only. Most of you know her as Africa's life coach. Most of you know her as a philanthropist. Most of you know her as the founder of I Am Africa. She wears tons of hats, but she's also my friend Jean Adero, who will be joining us today. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you.
And Jean and I are going to co-host as we welcome a very special person to the platform, a very honorable Martha Karua. She was in town yesterday for a town hall here in Marietta, the Kenyan American Community Church. She has done a tour of her book release, which we'll be talking about against the tide. I'm so happy that she's here to discuss with her and that she has spared time to be here with us. Thank you so much, Honorable Martha Karua, for being here today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Yay!
And good morning, viewers.
I know, right? Oh, so what time is it in Kenya? It will be good.
It is
good
evening.
Yes, it is.
This will be the 7 o'clock news, perhaps, if it was in Kenya.
That's towards 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock
in the
news.
evening.
Yeah. So we're very glad to have her here. She's been on a tour. She's had all things, but we just wanted to talk to her about a book. I would like to actually explore more about her being a mom, being a grandma, and just what advice she can give us as young ladies coming up. And I'm sure it will be interwoven with her story and her journey of where she has come from. Most people like to see not the end, but the destination of the journey, but they don't know what has transpired from beginning to end. And I feel like this is what this book is about. Can you tell us how you got to the decision, one, to write a book, and two, to even name it Against the Tide? Because I feel like titles are like names. They have importance. They take time to sit down and think about. What does that mean to you, and how did you get to that point?
I think I've always wanted to write a memoir, to write my story, because especially if you've been a public person, people tell your story for you. And it's not really your story, it's their perception of you. So you don't tell your story, someone will tell it.
That's right.
Not the way it is, but the way they see it.
That's right.
So after the 2023 elections, where I ran for president and didn't make it, I decided I want to write my memoir. I did not start immediately. I started much later, and I got a ghostwriter who was from this country, an American. And how I met her, there's this lady from Boston, Swanee Hunt. I met her in Kenya. She's written a book. The title is 𝗟𝗟, and she gave me her book. And when I told her I was thinking of writing, she recommended a lady called Laura, who'd written for her and who was doing some work in Rwanda.
Yeah.
So I meet Laura, and she starts to do my memoir. We do a lot of talking. She's taping. She was whatever. But I guess it is difficult for somebody writing who has no roots within the context of the story. So the first draft, although she had a local assistant, I did not hear my voice. So I got the assistant to step in. I still didn't hear my voice, and I was busy. We even went to a publishing house because I was told publishers can help you remodel and finish.
Yeah.
I didn't like my discussion with the public house about royalties, where they tell you that you get 15%, and the rest will go to printing, to their work, to distribution, to marketing, etc., etc. And I just wondered, whose book is it? And they'll give you a contract that ties you, that should you write anything else, you must take it to them, which I thought is sort of bondage. So I didn't like it, and I didn't go on with them. I paid a little money for them, having read my manuscript, something like what would be $1,000 here. And I took back my manuscript. Luckily, by the time you go to somebody, you have an NDA. So they're not going to use your material. And I stayed a few more years. Then in 2023, having ran as a running mate in the 2022 general elections, within the 𝗓𝗍𝗪𝗔 coalition, we started public protests over cost of living and related issues, and over what we had come to know was manipulation of the results of 2022. So we were, after spending a day in demonstrations, I found the energy, surprisingly, in the evening to sit and work on my book.
Wow.
And by then I had found another author in Kenya who was trying to help me redo it in a different manner. Someone who's written, whose book I had read and liked it. So after he helped reshape a little, I was able to sit down now, chapter by chapter, page by page, to go through and customize the story to be mine, add things that I thought should be added, add chapters that I thought should be the stories that should be told, and I actually was able now to tell my story. And having finished around 2023 and said, now this is the story, we looked. I was still wondering what I'll do. I was toying with self-publishing, like 𝗶𝗪𝗶 𝗪𝗶𝗃𝗲 did.
Yeah.
And one day when I was in a bookshop, and I was discussing with the bookshop attendants about giving prominence to local books. That was in Nairobi. And there's this girl who has authored 𝗟𝗶𝘁𝗵 of Choice. And I read it, and it's beautifully done. It's a work of fiction. And I was asking them why it's not in the bestseller corner. And they told me it's actually a bestseller, and showed me where it was. Behind me was a lady, Patricia Murugami, who is an author of motivational books.
Okay.
I know.
So she talked to me, and when I said I'm avoiding the established publishers, she told me she was able to avoid them. She showed me her books. I bought 2 of them from the same bookshop. And we got discussing, and she told me of a person who can help me print, and they will not talk of percentage. The book will be wholly mine. I'll just pay the cost of printing. That's how this book has been done.
It's been done.
I got Dr. Barina, who did the printing, helped with editing, which I paid for, has connected me. He's helped us put it on Amazon, has contacts around the world. Anywhere I go on a book tour, I will not have to carry books.
That's
I
fantastic.
can get them locally done.
That's great.
So I've been able to avoid
All the
bondage
all
of
those things. What I
publishing.
saw as bondage.
Yeah.
And it means when I write my second book, which I'm intending to write on electoral justice, I can take it anywhere I want.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You said something that's really caught my attention, is that you knew your voice.
Yes.
And there are a lot of women who don't know their voices, and young ladies who don't know their voices. How did you discover yours?
No, you see, you read and you're not hearing you.
You're not hearing you.
Yeah, and
Sounds
I
like somebody
realized
else.
I was just being lazy. Writing is not magic. A memoir is storytelling.
Right.
It's not an academic book I'm writing.
Right.
So I realized, just like my grandmother used to tell me stories, my auntie, my mother, my father, I'm a storyteller. I tell my grandchildren stories. I was telling my children stories. So I decided I can sit and storytell.
Right.
The oral tradition translated to pen and paper. So you read, you hear me telling you my story.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
Yeah.
I there's a part, not a part, but many parts where you do talk about your dad and your mom,
Yeah.
and how they influence a lot of your decisions, and
Yeah.
how even though you wanted to do this, they thought this might have been the right way to do this, but they stuck by whatever you said.
There was a discussion, and they would yield if I insist this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you always insisted ever since you were a young girl?
I think I am that girl who insists I want it this way. We would discuss. Of course, parents sometimes will put their foot down and
Right.
tell you it can't be done.
Right.
And we had our wars when I was a teenager. It's a necessary part of life.
Right.
When your personality is coming out. But I would say that I got all the support that parents can give. And I sit back and I say, in terms of growing up, I gave them trouble, but they supported me. Had they gotten tired, my story would be different. My duty is to support my children, my grandchildren, and telling my story helps that parent who has a child considered troublesome.
Right.
To keep supporting them to the end, not to abandon them. I hope my story tells a teacher, because teachers are really parents.
Right.
They spend more time with our children more than we do as they're growing up.
Yeah.
To know they stand in the place of a parent. That decision to exclude a child from school, if you could have exercised more patience, more guidance, is a life-altering event. You must take responsibility of doing the best you can to let every child grow their full potential, correct them in a gentle way. If I was a preacher and borrowing from yesterday's sermon, infuse everything with love.
Right.
Because where there is love, you'll not be thinking of total exclusion. And that's what also leadership should be. That even where you disagree, you are not thinking of excluding people entirely. You're thinking of how you can coexist even amidst differences. Yeah.
But it sounds like you had a relationship, which is a lot what is missing in a lot of families.
Yeah.
Did you also have external role models? Because it
Yes.
sounds like your parents were.
My parents,
Already
my
role
grandmother,
models,
I
yes.
grew up in a traditional setting
Yeah.
where your grandmother, your grandfather, but my paternal grandfather, because those are the parents you live with,
Right.
grandparents you live with, he died, he passed on when I was about 6 or less, I can't quite remember. So I remember very little of him. But my grandmother was with us until I started working.
Oh.
Right.
So throughout my adulthood, and she was one of my real role models.
Wow.
And she is a graduate of the social school, not formal schooling, but a very strong character. The stories she told, things I saw her do, I would say she lives on.
Wow.
And
It's
I see my
interesting.
grandchildren,
Yeah.
and I
You see that
see my father. I see a lot
of your
of the mother in him.
Yeah.
And my mother too has her qualities, and which taught me a lot. But in the neighborhood was this couple. I would call them a power couple those days. They were both teachers, and it was rare to have couples both working. My mom tells us when I was born, she was teaching. I'm the second born. My sister is 1 year older than me. And those days, when a woman got more than one child, they were expected to stop working to bring up families. My mom complied and stopped working and became a housewife, bringing up the family, looking after the farm and the small shop they had. Okay? So now in the village, there weren't many people having, couples working. So Mr. and Mrs. Mushira were a power couple. They're both teaching. And they were our neighbors. Their children were much smaller, so I can't say we visited her to play with her kids. But she would invite me and my sister. I now realize she was deliberately trying to mentor us. We used to admire her and think when we grow up, we would like to dress like her. She was much younger than my parents.
Yes.
So you see her well dressed. And one day, she bought a trouser suit, unheard of in the village those days. It was talk of the village. And people were talking how about Mr. Muchira has allowed the wife
to wear.
to wear. It was like an abomination. And she wore it days on end. You know, for 2 weeks, almost continuously, she would wear it until people calmed down. You know,
She gave
and
herself permission.
we really admired.
Yeah.
To be like that.
We'd
Now-
see them going for picnics with the children, which was also rare in the village.
Yeah.
My dad used to take us once in a while to places, but going for a picnic
It was the
wow.
highlight.
Now tell me, when it came to her modeling you unintentional, it was intentional for
It
her,
was
but you did it.
intentional,
You
yeah,
probably didn't get it
yeah.
at that point. Did it shape the way you were choosing subjects, careers, conversations, or
It
it
was
just
more about life.
yeah?
I remember vividly her telling us to be very watchful of boys, not to develop unhealthy relationships, and that boys could break our legs and we'll be unable to go to school. Euphemism
Yes.
for teenage pregnancy and those things.
Ah.
So she'll take us through things, you know, just conversationally. My mother would do the same, but you see, this is a neighbor also doing it, reinforcing things you've heard. So she was trying to tell us we could be like her, we could be working tomorrow, but we have to be very careful to work hard and to look after ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it was very helpful.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, as I go back to the book, there are parts that I read, and this is switching a little to the your career and your politics, and you were talking about when you first started.
Working as a magistrate.
Yes, even before not before, after the magistrate, where you would go out and campaign, right?
Yeah.
And you would be on the stage, and when you get to your turn, all of a sudden the person before you,
Yeah.
that's the end of the line. We're not talking
yeah.
about this
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
And she would go right up to the mic and be like, "When you're done, I need to speak," right? And they had no choice but to give that
I
to
did
you.
that 3 times. When I realized they were trying to edit me
Out of the
politics, out of visibility.
yeah.
You're one of the prominent people who have campaigned to return plural politics. Plural politics comes. John 𝗚𝗏𝗪𝗂𝗪's politicians who've been will come and they'll be given a place to speak because they are the politicians. This little skinny girl is not anywhere on the whatever. So I would sit patiently. And then you hear them say, and now so-and-so should come to the podium. He will be our last speaker. You realize you're not in the name. So you wait for somebody. I did that twice. The 3rd time they didn't wait for me to do it. I walked behind him. I waited for the gentleman to get to the podium and to start speaking. Then I woke up from my seat, went and stood behind him patiently. And you see, when you stand behind a person, they feel
Your presence.
Right.
So he looked back and I just calmly told him, finish and bring the mic. He realized, he saw the determination on my face. He finished and gave me the mic. So I spoke as the last speaker.
Yeah.
But before grabbing the mic the first time, the very first multi-party, if you call it, rally after the country allowed pluralism and political activity.
Right.
They have given the role of MC to a politician, a well-known politician, who was not anywhere near the agitation for multi-party. And I hear them, this time the rally was just getting underway. And I hear them calling the immediate former MP of Gichugu, the constituency I'm going to run in, to come and speak before me. I decided it's not happening.
Was he running?
He was going to run. He had
Okay,
just
so
resigned.
both of you would run.
He had just resigned from his position in government so that now he could come to the forces that appeared to be winning, to ride on the tide.
Right.
Okay? The tide of change. So I realized I'm being shortchanged. And I quickly woke up. My reaction was to wake up and go towards the podium as though it's my name that
That's
was
being
called. When he saw me, this old man is older than my father and a neighbor at home. So when he saw me going towards the mic, he hesitated and stood back. So he let me proceed along. So I reached the podium, and the fellow who was the MC, a politician, his age mate, he saw me and he told the people. By then I was going by the name 𝗪𝗪𝗂𝗃. He told the audience that I am greeting them. He passed on my greetings to much applause. I told him, bring the mic. He realized, he saw the determination, gave me the mic. So I greeted the people, a very brief address, like 2 minutes, and told them I will be a parliamentary candidate for the Gichugu seat. And I went and sat to a lot of applause. I was a household name as a crusader for plural politics, expanded democratic space, rule of law, and human rights. And I was applauded wildly. Then I went and sat. So he now calls his age mate to come to the podium, to no name recognition and to whatever, to a low-key introduction after mine has whatever. So now, that I think is what made them decide they will not call me, they'll edit me out. It's sort of a brotherhood, to help a brother.
Right.
Because there's this girl now who is disturbing the brother.
And this is the election you won.
Yeah, we have not got to elections since 91.
Yeah.
It's 92 January.
Right.
So we have a whole year to campaign. So this rally was in 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝗵, this big one. Then we now go to a rally near my home. It was in Embu borders, Kirinyaga. And a lot of people from Kirinyaga have come to the Embu side for the rally. So this is where they are giving another politician. My competitor was not in that one. But they gave another politician and said, this will be our last speaker. That's the man I went and stood behind. A very towering figure. So you can imagine a tiny girl, skinny girl standing behind the man, and him looking. But he saw the determination, and he was a good guy. He gave me the mic. When I did that as a third time, they now realized that it's like they decided this girl is a nuisance. Any rally I appeared, even before I had settled in my seat, I would be called as the next speaker. It's like, let's get rid of this nuisance and settle the rally.
But sometimes you gotta do that in life.
I earned my space. So I would like to tell those who are budding leaders, especially the young and women, because that's the category that is most ignored. Grab your space. It will never be given to you on a platter.
Right.
Yeah, even for the Gen Z, some of whom now complain that their parents and grandparents have overstayed. To you, I tell you, I hear you, I see you, and I even see your competence, because some of them are very, very able leaders. But you're not going to get it on a platter. Come for it. Grab your space.
Right.
You'll have to compete with me. And if you're able to get it, I'll bow down. Yeah.
And I think that's the part that a lot of young people fail to understand. And even I must say, it's enlightening to hear it from you, because you are in your early 30s at this point, right? And so you win in your 30s, and you start the journey.
And I start the journey. And
as an MP.
Before I was even 30, I'm an activist within the Law Society.
Right.
And even within the Law Society, the old established lawyers were the ones dominating. But our group came with serious activism against the government, and even trying to dethrone those old geezers.
Right.
I'm now an old geezer myself. I want the Gen Zs to know that we were not born old.
Right.
We were you some time back.
And really,
so, you got to get in there and take your space. Otherwise, nobody's going to give you.
Nobody's giving.
Right.
So even within the Law Society, I got elected as a Law Society Council member When multi-party came, I had just handed in my papers to be the vice chair. Those days you couldn't call yourself president even in an organization. There was only one president in Kenya. Now any name you can give yourself. Yeah, so I had given my papers to be a vice chair of the Law Society. But when I decided to run for parliament, I withdrew my papers. I don't believe that you should hog all the space. So I dropped off from the council and ran for parliament and successfully won. The first try.
Now, when you won, you were MP for several years.
Just 20 years, not more.
Not more than 20 years. But the first few years, you were MP and not cabinet secretary, because there was, in the constitution at the time, you could be you were the MP and cabinet secretary.
I was actually in parliament for 20 years consecutively. Those are 4 terms, 5-year terms. And the first 10 years, we were in opposition. Then we went into government in 2002. And I became Minister for Water. I stayed in water for 3 years. 2005 December, after the failed referendum, cabinet is dissolved, and I bounced back as Minister for Justice. I stayed Minister for Justice from December 2005, call it January 2006, because 2005, it's a holiday. And I was Minister for Justice 2006 to 2009 April when I resigned. So it is 3.5 years. I was a cabinet minister for 6.5 years. And that time, cabinet members, or cabinet secretaries as they call them here, were picked from among members of parliament. So I had 2 jobs.
And
cabinet secretary and a member of parliament. And when I resigned from cabinet, I went back to the back benches.
And that's the part I'm curious about, because you were a cabinet secretary in the Ministry of Water Management. And at that point, you had been an attorney. Now, how do you get picked for a job that is so different? Are they looking at you as the CEO? Do you have those CEO skills? Are you qualified for the role? Are you able to map out the water plan for the country at the time?
I was actually very upset when it was announced that I've been picked as cabinet secretary for water. For about 6 hours, I was not picking my phone because it was announced in the morning. My phone was ringing unattended.
Did you know it was coming?
Because I didn't. I expected I would be picked for cabinet. It wasn't a must, but I had expectations. I would have wanted justice. But justice went to another lawyer, 𝗘𝘅𝗰𝗹𝗂𝗀𝗋, and I'm named water. And I'm upset. And I think I'm being moved to the periphery where there is no power. After 6 hours of soul searching, I realized I was being silly. An opportunity to serve the nation at a national level, in whatever capacity, is something I should embrace and grab. So I changed my attitude about the job. And I promised myself I was going to immerse myself in water, learn everything about water, and I was going to succeed. And to answer you, yes, we have, when you go to college and you get a degree or whatever qualifications, it is the power to be able to look for information, get it, and utilize it. And I was very sure that focusing on the job, I was going to do well and to do it well. And I promised me that. And I now picked my phone and accepted congratulations that were coming. And finally, when I spoke to a brother of mine, because he said that the way I was not picking my phone, he was very afraid and thinking I may refuse the appointment. So I told him that's what I was trying to deal with, and I've now embraced it. Because those who know me knew there was trouble if I'm not picking the phone. And I did well as Minister for Water. Even the president kept on lauding me publicly.
What are you remembered for in the Ministry of Water?
Rolling out the water sector reforms, decentralizing service delivery to the counties. In fact, water was the first devolution. we devolved the services.
What does that
And
mean?
the success of water is moving service delivery from the center, from the capital, and devolving it to the counties. That time there were the districts, and we were getting each district to form its own water company.
Okay.
And that water company is the one that would give service delivery.
Yeah.
Then we separated regulation from service delivery.
Yeah.
So we formed a water regulatory authority.
Yeah.
We also formed water service boards that were regional to deal with water resource management and with the infrastructure, where we would manage, we were using what we call the whole basin approach. You manage the river, you don't just manage the service of giving people water. You also manage the resource. You manage the river from the source to the end where it pours into the ocean, the whole basin approach. And you form water associations all along the way so that those in the middle and at the end of the river are able to tell those at the source, do not overexploit the water. It is depleting and not reaching us. You are able to coordinate all that.
Yeah.
You are able to tell those who are at the source and at the catchment areas, stop felling the trees. Let us increase the trees to increase the sustainability of the water, to manage the sustainability. We were actually calling it sustainable management of water resources. So you're looking after service delivery, but also about the resource base.
Itself.
And then the other key thing on the reform was public participation, which is now in the Constitution, that you must have
input from the
consumers.
Yeah.
If it was the water companies, it must have hoteliers who are large consumers of water. If it is in a rural area, those who are irrigating, schools, or the water users. You're having them together so that you're managing the resource. The other thing, because water used to be managed by local authorities before. What local authorities were doing when the governance became weak is using the resources from water as their cash cow to pay for the salaries of the local governments and for other use, neglecting even repairs and water treatment, routine things, and neglecting expansion of the infrastructure. So the water sector reforms, by law and by the institutions we set up, we were sort of protecting the water resources, any revenue from water, to be used on water first, on improving the service, on managing the resource base, and only excess could return to the company. And the company directors would be the local authorities and the main water users. So the local authorities still got money. But they got money after water is serviced.
Now, what would the woman who benefited from you as a member of parliament say, from your area, say about the services that you actually worked on at the time and how it impacts them today?
The women in my constituency would remember me for the many water projects, but those many water projects were way before I became minister. As a member of parliament for the 10 years I was in opposition, I would walk up to partner offices. I walked up to Cedar, Canada, and was supported with a very large project, which revived a water project that had stopped operating in my one of the wards, which I happen to come from. Another one, several others, supported by different partners, by Cedar Sweden, UNDP through a project they were calling Africa 2000. I went to various partners, and I had so many water projects. In fact, I think President Kibaki naming me as Minister of Water was something to do with what he knew about me and water in my constituency. They were all marveling how I got projects when the government itself did not have any projects anywhere.
Yeah.
And I also belonged to an environmental group, Global Legislators for a Balanced Environment, called GLOBE. And I had been to many conferences on the environment, and water is part of the environment. Yeah. I even attended the World Sustainable, it was called WSSD conference in Durban. And I had an amount of environmental and water literacy. And when we were contributing to the Water Act 2002 in Parliament, I think President Kibaki must have thought I was a sort of water expert, because I talked about how two countries that are very, very dry, very little rainfall, Egypt and Israel, manage their water. How we need to manage our water with efficiency in order to get water for all uses, and also equitably. Right. So I think my water project, my contribution to that legislation must have made him find that I'm so connected with water, and earned me Minister for Water.
But you were only there for 2 years and then moved to Justice, right?
Three years.
Oh, it's 3 actually.
I had rolled out the water sector reforms. We had improved governance, we had improved efficiency, and the whole country was feeling the effect of the reforms. Right. The reforms are there up to today. Even with deteriorated governance, the water sector reforms remain.
Right.
So, switching gears a little, at this time when you're doing all this and the career is taking off, you're still a mother.
Yeah.
You're still trying to raise children. You're still trying to take care of all that on the home front.
Yeah.
How did you balance that?
Thank you very much for that question. I'll first begin by saying there's no manual about how to be a mother.
Right.
You got to do it your way, trial and error, because nothing works perfectly that is organized by human beings.
Okay.
But you got to keep doing your best and adjusting to the new challenges. Yeah. When I entered politics, my daughter, who is older, was 6 years.
Okay.
My son was 4 years.
Wow.
And I used to drag them along to my campaigns, to my activities. As they get to teenage, the teenage rebellion and identity crisis.
Right.
Where now the child no longer wants to accompany you. They say, but I'll have nothing to do in your meeting. I'm not coming. You start fighting with them, thinking that they are getting out of hand, no longer obedient. Then after some time, I realized I've got to view it differently. They have different interests from me.
Right.
I've got to accommodate them and arrange where to leave them and how to leave them when I'm going to my meetings. So we've grown up with trial and error.
Yeah.
And they grew to adulthood.
Did they understand what you are trying to do?
They did and they did not. Because sometimes you leave them. You leave them under care. And because by the time I ran for parliament, I was a single mother. Yeah. I stayed. My son was born when I had already left their father's house. My marriage was rather short. 3 years. But it brought forth two lovely children.
Right.
So for the longest time, I brought them up on my own.
Yeah.
And I was able to balance.
Yeah.
My sister Esther was the other co-parent. Whenever I was away, I would leave them with Esther.
Yeah.
So it's the family structure.
And even now that I'm away as a granny,
that's who
Esther is managing my grandchildren for me and
That's
hers.
wonderful.
And hers. We've continued. I have a very supportive family.
with you. Yeah.
My sisters are supportive, my brothers are supportive, and by the way, we are 4 girls, 4 boys. And then our parents. And we support each other completely.
So when you are forming your path and your kids are now trying to look for their own path for how they want to go, what do you say to the woman who you just spoke to and say, you can't be given this on a platter, you have to get it? and also trying to balance this. I have two young kids. At least now we're in the age where we can talk eye to eye. But what do you say to that mother who is struggling? Is this the path I need to go? Is politics for me? Is the boardroom for me? Is corporate for me? How do I jump in there and go for it? Because it's a different day and age now.
I'll say go for it. Go for the things that make you happy. Try your best to balance. No manual.
No manual.
Do it your way. But balance your children's need, remembering that their childhood is not gonna come back for them to live it again. Remembering too that your youthfulness, because young mothers are youthful, most of them, your youthfulness is also not coming back, and your career will not wait for you. Try to balance the best way you know how, so that your children don't miss out and you too don't miss out. It sometimes gets too much, but believe you me, God made us as multitaskers. Remember your mother, remember the woman next door. Even when you're feeling so tired, you make it. And I found ways of relaxing. Because at whatever ages, children like to go out. So we would agree to go out. As they were learning swimming, I learned to swim too, because I had not learned swimming in my youth. So that we could enjoy swimming. And swimming is very relaxing. If I've got my political fights out there, I'll go and relax myself by kicking the water. At least there you can get it out on the water. So, and it's very soothing, very relaxing. Sundays, if I'm not in the constituency, I'll take them out. They'll be swinging, while me and another sister of mine called Lois are sitting down, having a meat platter and sharing a drink. Yeah, so you find your way around things. And holidays, if I'm going to a conference as a member of parliament, then if I can, I'll pay for my kids to come with me. And they'll stay in my room. Yeah.
Vacation kind
of. It's kind of vacation, and then you've got to have a program where you know where they are and what they are doing within the same hotel. Yeah, so things like that. And then I also found, because even as I was a member of parliament, I was very active in civil society, in the Federation of Women Lawyers, International Federation of Women Lawyers, the Kenya chapter. I was also active in the League of Kenya Women Voters, which I was chair. So what we would do, conferences by these organizations. As FIDA, we started arranging conferences which were dubbed FIDA Women and Their Children. So we would collectively get a minder to come with us, who will have programs at the pool, games for the kids as we are in the conference hall. Because we realized if you leave them alone to swim, you might come back to accidents. So we would arrange that. And we expanded them. They became FIDA women, not just with their children, but friends. You could bring a friend along. People could bring spouses. There are even those who brought their mother-in-laws. It was lovely.
And I imagine that this is something that you have always wanted for yourself, as well as for other young women who come behind you, and also young men. Let's not keep them out. And going in as Minister for Justice, I think it gives you an opportunity to literally make sure that the governance is going as it should, so that people can have opportunities like the ones you're describing. Because right now, talking like this, someone listening to us from the rural areas is totally different. Their life is a very, very different experience. And then you go in there, and it doesn't go like most of us expected it would go. And I'm sure there were a lot of things that surprised you, because you ended up resigning from that role.
It went very well, and the advice I gave would be taken by the president, applied by the government. For the first time, we had ministers stepping aside to be investigated in accordance with the law. Because as I became Minister of Justice, this scandal had already come out.
Which
the
one?
Anglo leasing scandal, which had come from the Kanu era. People in our government had been recruited by the Mandarins who were part of that scandal. And there was already a report by the official opposition, whose leader then was Uhuru Kenyatta. And I advised President Kibaki, and he accepted that the ministers had to step aside to be investigated. Otherwise, the mood in the country was against the government, and the government would have fallen even in parliament, because even our backbenchers were totally fed up. He agreed. I talked to my colleague, the Minister of Finance, David 𝗪𝗏𝗏 at that time, the late, a very honorable man. And he agreed that it was in order to save the integrity of the government and its own integrity, because if you are investigated and cleared, you have saved your integrity.
Right.
He agreed to resign. So we went, to step aside. We went, saw the president. With him, the president agreed. And we went back to his office at Treasury Building. And if you see the tapes of his resignation, you will see me sitting beside him. He was the first, and he did not argue. He just told me, if that's the best course, he's ready for it. Others who were reluctant to leave office, after 2 days, the president announced that he had accepted their request. He literally had to push them out. So he just said he had accepted their request to step aside. They had no option.
Wow.
Because also, at that stage, the president has the power to hire and fire.
Yeah.
So if you resist, then you can also be fired. Yeah, so they stepped aside.
Right.
And obviously, they were very upset with me.
Now, this was in the second
In
Kibaki.
205 now.
Oh, this was 205.
When I've just been moved
just
to
come-
justice.
I see.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that term, that is when we had the contentious election in
The
2007.
post-election violence.
Right.
In fact, I came in as Minister of Justice at a very tense time. It is just when the government has lost the referendum,
Right.
and the government is split into two. The No camp led by Raila,
Right.
and Ruto emerged in that No camp. And no, it was led by Raila. Ruto's No camp was later in 2010. And the Yes camp led by President Kibaki.
Right.
I actually campaigned for the referendum, I believe, more than the Minister of Justice, although I was in water. So he reorganizes government and brings me to justice.
Right.
And takes Kiraitu to a different ministry. So when they are stepping aside, I am Minister for Justice. That's why I'm in advising the president on policy issues, on the fight against corruption, and coordinating that fight.
Right.
It's in that capacity I advised for their resignation.
And it's during that time when, of course, there was a camp that said the election was stolen, and then there are those who said the election was fair and square, and post-election violence ensued. Now, what do you say to those who still have you as the face of the government at the time you were speaking on behalf of the president?
Yes,
and now do not believe you are the person that you say that you are.
I would tell them, wake up and look at the investigative reports which were made by international figures, not by myself or the government I served. Look at the Kriegler report on what went wrong with the election. Look at the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 report on perpetrators of violence. You will not see my name. And the face of government you talk about, you will hear me at KICC wearing a striped t-shirt and a hat saying that the law must be followed. Whoever is not happy with the elections should go to court, because that's what our law said even then.
Yeah, right.
You will hear me say the election will not be won by shouting. It will be won by the ballot. And then ask yourself, what's wrong with that? My election was stolen in 2017 in Kirinyaga. I went to court. The court did not give me justice. I went all the way to the East African Court, where the court affirmed that, yes, the Kenyan Supreme Court and the court system never gave me justice. It affirmed me. It didn't restore the seat, but I was affirmed. Our system is not perfect. Sometimes you don't get what you want, But what else can I tell you? To pick a machete and go and settle it? No. We follow the rule of law, even in an imperfect system. Right. 2022, our win as Azimio was stolen by the KK regime. We went to court, we didn't get justice. My case is again pending at the East African Court. We didn't get out to cause mayhem. We went to court, where we never got justice. Compare that with what I said in 2007 and tell me what's wrong with that. And I always ask, so you think Raila would have, if indeed I had caused a stolen election, he would reward me by making him his running mate?
But you know the cynical Kenyans will say that.
Don't you think that Raila knows a little more than you? You see, come off it. Go to the reports and ask yourself, why was Karua never a candidate for ICC? Those were international investigators, right, not local. Yeah. Stop wiping off the bloody hands of my brothers on my skirt. Talking does not equal violence unless if you're advocating for violence. I advocated for the rule of law then. I advocated for even today. But it is a sad thing and a blot,
right,
on our history as Kenyans, right, that people should die. And today, it is a blot on our country that the Ruto regime should kill people just for expressing dissent. In 2023, so many were killed at point blank range unnecessarily during the Azimio demonstrations, over 70, and so many injured. 2024, over 60 Gen Z. We believe there were more because of the many bodies in the various mortuaries, but recorded by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, over 60, over 600 injured. We continue to have people detained, abducted, turning up dead, turning up tortured, some disappearing without trace. Those are the issues we should be concentrating on how to solve, not picking narratives that have no evidence or foundation, that Martha Karua. What is the problem? I was Kibaki's agent, just like Orengo was Raila's agent. Or is your view that Kibaki did not deserve to have an agent? I had voted for him, I was escorting my vote.
Right.
And that I would do any day. Right. And the Kriegler report and my own evidence, because I was at KICC tallying the votes the whole night, as Kibaki's agent, and Orengo stood in as Raila's agent. It is a fact that votes were exaggerated in some polling stations on both sides. Chepalungu had turned down 337,000 votes for Raila, which was way above the entire population of that constituency. When I raised it, it was said to be a typographical error, and they corrected it to 37. We know through the petitions that places like Junja, the votes were exaggerated, and that's why the petition of Kabogo succeeded. We know other places, both sides. We know for a fact that Kasipul Kabogo had voted 115%. So with exaggeration on both sides recorded by Kriegler, what moral authority does anybody have to say the election was stolen? Stolen by who? By both sides? Two sides, two thieving sides. One claiming righteous indignation while both whatever. My election in Gichugu, my votes were counted normally and 20,000 people didn't vote. In the thieving stations, those votes would have been taken and added, right, making a 90%, not a 60%. So I was at KICC with the courage of my conviction, because up to that time, I did not actually suspect that there was widespread rigging. That's why they were able to explain to me that 𝗘𝗅𝗰𝗋𝗃𝗃 was a typographical error, and I took it. I now know it wasn't, because later in Parliament, Isaac Ruto, who was the member for the 𝗘𝗅𝗰𝗋𝗃𝗃 then, when they differed with ODM, he said that it's on the Hansard, that ODM came to power through rigging, and Martha Karua is his witness.
Oh,
In other words, he was saying, I knew it because he knows I raised it.
right.
Yeah, so
And
I want to say, let's not be just throw accusations without facts, because there are records that can help. Read the Krigler report.
Right.
They'll vindicate me.
Yeah.
and now going forward,
Yeah.
you are running for office.
Yes.
And you have had times when it has, I can imagine that was a painful moment for you as a person to hear that said about your name. And now you
In
move
politics,
forward.
lots of things are said about your name, and they'll never cease.
Right.
Yeah, so
But that doesn't stop the pain.
it can't stop. I don't have pain.
Right. You
It's
just let go.
irritation.
Right.
Pain I don't have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you go forward.
I go
Yeah.
forward with a clear conscience.
Yeah.
When your conscience is clear,
Yeah,
you don't have pain. You will have irritation
I got it.
that this is being said,
Right.
but I don't go with a burden. I
Right.
walk light. Yeah.
Right.
And
But
that's why I have lasted.
right.
Yeah.
And still, there is no election commission set up yet. We are thinking that the young people who came to the streets in June will vote for the country that they want and deserve. And that's an uphill battle as well. What do the parties do to get young people to join in to the cause that they, in theory, think will bring change, and yet action is required? The parties keep rebranding, building, coalescing, meeting with different parties. It's confusing. What do you do to focus on the goal?
Another good question, and a lot of focus here on parties and on leaders. Little focus on the electorate.
Right.
In fact, the saying in Kenya is that the politicians are the same, the monkeys are the same, and the forest is the same. Nothing has changed. And I say yes, and I say, and the citizens are the same ones who knowingly elect unsuitable people and come to cry later. So what am I saying? Is that both the leadership and the citizens have failed themselves. We need to reassess ourselves as a nation. Return to our operational manual, which is the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Go to the values, national values and principles of governance in Article 10, which say that we need transparency, accountability, inclusiveness, public participation, all the virtues that we should have in leadership. Go to the chapter on leadership and integrity and ask yourself, why do I elect? What do I expect of the leadership I elect? What are the qualifications do I need to seek in the leadership? And leadership is not just presidency. We are talking of your MCA,
Grassroots.
member of county assembly,
Yeah.
and governor, because those are the ones closest to you in the county. We are talking of your member of parliament, your women rep,
Yeah.
your senator, and finally the president. You need all those to be accountable.
Right.
So we need to return to value-based leadership, not transactional, waiting for handouts. And we need to remind ourselves, looking for good leadership is a project. Just like that water project, you contribute money to bring in your corner of the world when government has neglected you. Just like that school community initiative you build to get your children to go to school in absence of government service. So for this project to move, members of the party must fund the party, contribute money, not expect money from it. Nobody goes to a project, water project, to receive money. They go to give their energy, their ideas, and their money. Come the same way to a political party. And we leaders must stop that handout culture.
Right.
And we must discuss of good governance and value-based and issue-based politics. That is how I got elected in 1992. As a young lawyer, I didn't have money. That's how I have gotten elected in most elections. Looking for support from the people. There are those who give you voluntary service, which you can also count as money. It can be monetized.
Yeah.
So we must return to our values, because that's where we were in the 90s. It went south in 2007. We need to return to where we were. So I want to say this. Kenya needs you. Kenya needs each one of us. Leaders alone cannot bring change. We have to want it enough so that collectively a majority of us can bring change. That is what happened in 2002. In 1992, when multi-party politics returned, we were not able to overthrow KANU, although the opposition got the majority of votes, over 67%. KANU and Moi got about 33%. But Moi won the presidency because the opposition split their votes between 3 to 4 candidates. It happened again in 1997. But in 2002, when the opposition had only one main candidate, the country voted overwhelmingly for the NRC coalition, and that's how Kibaki came in. I am saying in 2027, let Kenyans come together, support one candidate, and let us build a formidable coalition so that when the Electoral Commission, which I know will not be an independent Electoral Commission, it's likely to be a William Ruto Electoral Commission with a mandate to manipulate, just the way they manipulated the 2022. The only thing that will enable us to dethrone the KK regime is by having a unified, formidable opposition that can overrun any attempts to rig. And when you ask how we are joining the same players, people who have come from different backgrounds, when you are in opposition and when you're in a political party, you don't say bring a certificate of good conduct before entering. But what we are saying is we have an operational manual, the Constitution of Kenya 2010. You come to the coalition, all of us must embrace the values in Article 10. I won't embrace your values or you embracing mine.
Right. Yeah.
Our common values as Kenyans, the standard we set for ourselves.
Yeah.
So let everybody come to contribute. Some of those who have left government recently, like Gachagua, Muturi, Malala, those are critical voices in exposing the folly of those who are in government.
Right.
They are talking of personal experience. To that extent, they are believable because we have seen them getting mistreated. We have experienced the mistreatment by government by removing NHIF and bringing 𝗓𝗪, which is causing death and not helping people, by the many scandals, by the many abductions, violations of human rights. So when they are giving their personal stories, it reinforces what we already know. They are critical voices to that extent. And together, we can have enough force to push the KK regime out. That is what happened in 2002 when Raila walked out of KANU with a huge group from KANU that included 𝗘𝘅𝗰𝗹𝗿𝗂𝘀 the late, included Kalonzo, included the likes of William Ntimama, and many other people. President Kibaki, Wamalwa, and Gilu, who are the four leaders in that, foremost leaders in that coalition, did not stop to ask, where are your certificates of good conduct? They came in, but when Kibaki was forming government, he was very deliberate in his speaks. And that's why the NAC revolution took off very well. Unfortunately, pulled back by bad apples at a certain stage. And that is why we were able to bring back economic recovery. It is possible to join hands. And we also hope that when we are together and we embrace the values we have all agreed upon in our constitution, we'll be able to impact on each other and form a formidable group guided by our operational manual, again the constitution, and the rule of law, to restore the rule of law in Kenya and to liberate Kenyans from the pain. You talked of rebranding. We rebranded our party from the name changed from NARC Kenya. Now we are the People's Liberation Party. And our slogan is Unite, Liberate. Because we need to unite in order to liberate ourselves from all these pains.
So I know your schedule is very tight and you've been away from home for long enough and you are ready to
tomorrow.
You're ready to get back on that plane. Even as we wrap up, I have two final questions that I want to ask you and I'll make them short. One of them, as I was getting ready this morning, I said to my 17-year-old, I'm going to meet this leader, this activist and lawyer and politician. What do you want me to ask her? And she asked me this question. She said, and it's not just for Kenya, but almost all of Africa where we're here. What are your plans as you go forth in your new role as president when you do run for that? What are your plans to deal with femicide?
Enforcement of the law. I believe that the femicide, the upsurge of femicide is capable of being stopped and dealt with decisively through investigations and enforcement of the law. There is reluctance in Kenya today, in the political class, to push back on the femicide, because I do not believe for one moment that our investigators are unable to see the pattern and see how to counter and to actually arrest the perpetrators of femicide. I think they're deliberately letting it happen to the extent that people have started saying there's a cult that believes when you kill young, beautiful women, it's a way of remaining in power. And those rumors are coming because of the unwillingness, the inability of a proper response to crime.
Last question, even as we roll this out, what lessons about motherhood, discipline, and love do you hope young women, especially in leadership, take away from your story?
I think just like that, you can be able to do it. Follow your dream. Follow your passion, because anything you're passionate about, you do well. And always remember the importance of your family, of your children, because you too were raised. And if your parents didn't support you, stand by you, see you through your education, you would not be where you are. So we have a responsibility to bring up the next generation. You never can say you've done it well. It's, we do it by trial and error. The responsibility we have, anything you do, do it to your best. It may not always turn out the way you want, but you will have tried.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the Iron Lady herself, the Honorable Martha Karua. We want to sincerely thank you for taking your time out to speak with us today. I'd like to make a special mention to your PA, Wanja, for making this possible. Wanja, you're the best. Thank you so much, Gina Dare, for being here and for the conversation we had behind the cameras, the one and the only Molo Wilson. I am Diana Korir. We wish you a good afternoon or a good night wherever you are in Kenya, and we wish you safe travels back home, and pass our greetings, as we say.
Thank you for having me. Atlanta has been a blast. Anybody wanting to know more about PLP, log in to plpkenya.com or marthakarua.org.
And if you haven't, get the book, Against the Tide. She says, her as a politician and the activist, but if you want to know Martha, get in here. She's taken time to write it and put it together. Run to Amazon, get the book. I have a signed copy. I'm sorry if you don't have one. But till next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.